From downtown Albany, Georgia, and the home of Pretoria Fields Beer, this is the No Dams Given podcast. And now, here's Trip Morgan and Billy Mann.
All right. We're back again with the No Dams Given podcast here in beautiful downtown Albany at the Levy Studios. And today we have Farmer Fredo, Fernando Jackson, the executive director of Flint River Fresh. Thank you. Glad you're with us here today, buddy.
I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. We're going to start out and talk all about farming and how it's been affected and Flint River Fresh. First thing I'd like to do is say a thank you and a shout out to Sean O'Keefe, who is now my favorite Canadian. He's actually from the home of where the Labrador Retriever was developed or came about. He has a charity that they support called Polo in the Pines. He asked us to come up and be on his show.
Tastemakers,
Tastemakers Talk Studio.
Yep.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was great. We had a really good time. Our farmer extraordinaire, Harris Morgan, was my dad was on it and talked a lot about Emmer's grain, his favorite subject.
The gentleman farmer,
and the dynamic duo. But as we were leaving, he, meaning Sean O'Keefe, gave me a flower in a bowl, and the bowl had the handprints of a little girl on it. And I knew, and it had a sunflower in it. And he said thank you, and it was really touching to me. I went and looked up the girl who did it. Her girl's name is Caroline Brewer. She's had several surgeries at Children's Health Care of Atlanta, which is the charity that Polo in the Pines and Sean support. And we're going to support Sean in his efforts. What a great organization they have. And what a beautiful little girl, and I agree with him. She's one of my heroes, too. So just wanted to, before we got started, wanted to say that. And anything to add?
Nah, it's incredible, everything they do, and they've helped local people from Albany as well.
Yeah.
Last year.
The Sullivan Sisters.
The Sullivan Sisters, yes.
Yeah, so that was they went up and had the same event. And so he has supported people from all over the state, and it's just a great organization, and we're going to do everything we can to help him continue in his mission. All right, very good. So Farmer, what do you want me to call you? Farmer Fredo?
Farmer Fredo, that'll go.
All right, very good. We just had a real actual disaster happen. I think Michael, as in all accounts, can be considered a disaster. So tell us how you're doing. Tell us what we were just talking about it a second ago, and it's obviously affected you in your production capacity and the things that are going on in South Georgia. So give us a little bit of information about how you're doing and what we can expect.
Yeah. So as I was telling you guys earlier that when we first heard about Michael coming through, I remember as a farmer, as a grower, as a producer, thinking, we'll be back to normal by Friday. Might be a couple of days that we'll be, not able to do what we need to do to perform. But as the next day happened and you start to get on the phone, one of our core programs that we do is a fresh box program where we collect produce from farmers in Southwest Georgia within 75 miles of like Albany, Georgia. But most of our farmers are in Mitchell County, Grady County, down near Donaldsonville and those areas. And so once the storm kind of hit, get on the phone just to kind of reach out to people, and some of the growers just like, it's not looking good, Fredo. It's not looking good, and it's a story that's continuum. And as I talked to more growers, the number just started to increase. Like I was just looking at some stats from the Georgia Department of Agriculture. It was basically saying in vegetable productions, we have a $430 million loss. in vegetable production, and that's just it concentrated in Southwest Georgia and like a little strip that goes from like Albany towards like Savannah that were kind of hit. And then if you bring in peanut production, cotton, and pecans, we suffered over like a $3 billion loss just related to in agriculture. And in Georgia, agriculture is the big business. And so as we go about, and for myself, and talk with farmers and trying to figure out what to do next, this has been more motivation to continue to push Georgia grown, to continue to push like those farmers that are growing produce for themselves, but also to go out and push and tell the stories of why you should support like that local farmer. Like I've seen through Facebook, farmers talking about, they've been farming for 5 generations, and you see an image of like a pawpaw next to like their great-great-grandchild, and with the question mark of should we still stay in this business. And I never thought I would hear 5th-year growers or farmers like having a conversation about, do I continue to grow food to feed people? Do I continue to make this the way that I sustain my family? And knowing that all of this transpired in a roughly a 24-hour period. I think about my son, Steven. He was talking about the Hopkins down in Grady County and thinking about the bell peppers that they grew. And he was like, Pop, they planted those bell peppers, 3 months ago. And he started doing the math, like 3 months times is 90 days, 90 days times 24 hours. And he just started going on and on and on. And then he was like, but all that's gone now. So what is, Little Walker, what are they going to do? And I said, they'll be all right. They have collard greens and mustard greens, but it's a tough pill to swallow because, and some of my growers, they're growing like on 10 acres of land. And so when they get hit, it's devastation, and they don't know if there's going to be federal assistance coming. And if it does come, we're in the week 3 or 2 of like the hurricane. So you imagine if you didn't get paid or didn't have a source of income for 2 weeks, what would be your mindset? Just interacting with your children.
Oh yeah, it could be desperation.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't imagine that. We've been thinking about everybody and thinking about that constantly and talking about it. That's one reason we're so excited to have you on to shed the light and tell us how these people are doing, because we're all concerned and thinking about them.
Yeah, and then I think what this podcast can do and what this conversation can do is to look at ways of like empowering or supporting like the Georgia Grown brand, or supporting organizations that are working with cooperatives of small scale farmers. Like here in Albany, we have 2 groups in particular: Southwest Georgia Project that does a lot of work with minorities, African Americans, and women. And we also have like the Federation of Southern Cooperative that's historically.
What was that first one?
Southwest Georgia Project.
The Southwest Georgia Project.
Yes, sir.
And they work with minorities. Tell me about that.
So Southwest Georgia Project, the executive director is Miss Shirley Sherrod, and they've been around since Martin Luther King days, organizing growers, and so they have a network, a base of minority farmers that are like small scale. When I mean small scales, I'm talking 10 acres or less, that are spread out through a 9-county sort of area, and they work with them with financial assistance, educating them on government programs from NRCS, Farm Service Agency, those type of things. And they go into those areas and they are, trying to find a platform for those growers. And so a lot of what I do is I try to work with the growers that they're partnering with, but then also partner with groups like the Federation of Southern Cooperative. That's a cooperative that spans 7 states. Again, working with minority, African-American, women, beginning farmers, and veteran groups, helping them, again, get started with growing their own food, how to develop their business plan, how to use QuickBook, those sort of things. And, there's just this need of these growers that are growing there, again, not like the big guys. I mean, if you're like, I explain to people down here in Southwest Georgia, you can drive through a whole city and it's nothing but cabbage, because we have some farmers that got like land like that. But then you have like these smaller towns like in Arlington and Leary, in Sumter outside of Sylvester, where you might have like a farmer with like 25 acres, and they're like the main produce provider for that area. And so they are just known for a pickup truck underneath the oak tree with a sign that just says boiled peanuts and everything they're growing on the back of the pickup truck. And so those are the growers that I find myself constantly thinking about, like how they're maintaining, how they're going to survive. Like in my mind, I always picture this one farmer by the name of Samuel Lee in Sumter. He's like 78 years old, like a head full of white hair. He grows everything organic and natural, but I haven't seen Mr. Lee in like 3 weeks. Yeah.
So do the guys who have the smaller farms, are they? Do you know? You may not know that they have insurance. Do they insure their crops? Is that I don't know, but that's kind of what I feel like Southwest Georgia Project does as an organization, is kind of make sure that they will have the insurance pieces. And then there are other to make sure that they're doing all the things that if disaster does strike, they're okay.
And then Fort Valley State University, they have like a cooperative that goes out and have these conversations with the growers. So again, there are people that do the checking for the grower, because when I first started, I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to plant something and feed some people. But by going to the Cooperative Extension Office, the NRCS office, and the Farm Service Agency office, they guided me, and I just pray that growers will kind of know those type of things. But then also I look at, down the road that maybe there's like opportunities through collaboration and partnership that they get the resources that they need as well.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that I'm most interested in, which is organic growing, and I can tell you firsthand how difficult that is. And so somebody who's already trying to grow organically, meaning not using pesticides, not using herbicides, not using chemicals, really doing things in a more ancient way. So we're going back a generation and doing things the way our grandparents or great-grandparents did them. And certainly we know that those products turn out and are better for us.
Yes.
So those guys, they're probably hit the hardest, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you think about, just already, just naturally the climate, as an organic grower, it just takes one shift in the wind and a couple of days of consecutive rain where you're not able to just do a pest management strategy. Next thing you know, the worms have gotten to your crop. And if the worms, as they always say, if you see 2 or 3 worm holes, then there's a whole family that you're missing, right? and so with that, it is time sensitive with organic, but then you also have to factor in the labor pool and stuff as well too. Like we didn't hit upon that. If you're running a farm and a storm like this comes through, your employees, their priority is their family as well. So let's say a tree limb comes down or the car is damaged, so they're not going to report to work. And so you don't know how long it's going to be before they're back on their feet. And some areas, like Donaldsonville, Georgia, they're talking 3 to 4 months before power is fully restored. So you put 3 to 4 months again, no income, no work, no power, and just that. And so one of the things that we're looking at trying to figure out at Flint River Fresh, we do a program called a mobile farmers market, where we go into low-income, underserved communities and bring fresh produce from local growers directly to the people. And so we're trying to figure out a strategy to be able to travel into some of those areas that are affected and see if we can bring the fresh produce directly to them and find a community partner that allow for us to a community partner similar to how Pretoria Fields does, allows for us to set up a space of fresh produce and allow for the community to come in and purchase it directly from a grower or representative of the farmer, so that the farmer gets a little bit of income kickback and then the community gets access to fresh local produce.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And it's interesting to me that in bigger cities, and I'm thinking about Atlanta, that there is several farmers markets. Really, if you drive around, especially on Saturday and Sunday mornings, on different corners. So, and you sort of can't miss them when you're driving through neighborhoods in Atlanta. And I was surprised by that the last couple of times I've been there. And think about that as compared to where this is the home of farming. And, we'll have one pop up occasionally, and the Tiff Park came up a few years ago. And you would think that would be a common part of our culture. And it really hadn't been, or at least it hadn't. We go to the grocery store as opposed to shopping at the local,
Yeah, and I'm smiling as you're bringing it up because I grew up in Plains, Georgia, and I tell the story about I got into farming to honor the legacy of my grandfather. But I'm from most small towns. There is the vegetable man that drives around in a pickup truck, and I've noticed that culturally, and me and my wife, we had this conversation that culturally we are still used to the vegetable man showing up in some underserved communities. And we cracked the joke about I can shell some peas and I can go to a doctor's office, a lawyer's office, the hospital, the school system, and say, I got fresh peas, and people would just come out and make a purchase, right?
No doubt.
And so
doubt.
we have this, we're not the fan of the pop-up market or the farmer's market, but we are a fan of somebody working hard, sweat equity, and bringing that produce directly to us and making a purchase. I used to ride during the summer months, have an igloo cooler filled with cream 40 peas on ice, and just be able to go to a business and make, and people would buy. And so what I've noticed that in those communities that don't attend a Tiff Park or haven't traveled to Atlanta and seen the Freedom Market or the Peachtree Market, that they are open to fresh produce, but they were raised culturally, generationally of a person riding around the community offering it to them, or in some areas, if you ever traveled to Panama City from Albany, and you see almost every 5 miles there's a farm stand. Mm-hmm. And if you ever drove some of the back roads here in Georgia, you can see that same pattern of farm stands, but now they're vacant. Just driving from Albany to Doe Run to Moultrie, before you get into Moultrie, there's a pecan orchard with a peach farm stand that's there, but it's vacant. Or if you ever drove from Dawson to Columbus, after you get outside of Dawson, you start to notice whether if you're in heading towards Richland or whatnot, you'll see a couple abandoned sort of farm stands. And so that's part of what the legacy of Flint River Fresh that we're shooting towards is to bring back that culture, because in those communities there are people that are used to getting fresh produce that are in some of these communities there isn't a grocery store there's just Dollar General, and so if we can just figure out a way with partnerships and collaborations, right? Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting because with the advent of organic farming, I hope and think that we've almost gone full circle where we had the family farm and then it went to a more corporate farming, which is what you're talking about, which is the absence of those roadside where they're basically selling their fresh produce on the road, or their fresh products on the road. And with organic farming and a little added value to to that quality, maybe we come all the way full circle and get back to the idea of a smaller farm done with a lot of thought and less chemicals, less of the things that we know are maybe adverse to our health overall.
Yeah, I totally agree, and just following that, I think what I appreciate. I started farming at Cornelia Farms in Americus, Georgia, and our focus was doing biological pecans. So looking at pecan crop and growing it natural, chemical free, but also raising pasture raised pork, grass fed beef, and the whole nine. And the piece that I appreciated about Cornelia and with true organic farming, there's a sense of community, because of that you're not going to use as much chemicals and pesticide. You're going to rely upon labor. But if you're able to get the community to support the farm, then you have people in the neighborhood that will come help you harvest the peas, or help you harvest the watermelon, help you harvest or pick the muscadine grapes. And yeah, you might trade off and just say, okay, you help me out, so here goes 2 watermelons, or here goes a basket of muscadines, on and so forth. But there's this piece that is community focused. So even when you look at like the organic growers that are like in like Metro Atlanta, that are like growing chemical free up in that area in Athens, there's a network communities of farmers that the community itself supports, and they support them by purchasing the produce. But there are restaurants that exclusively will buy from that farm. There are schools that will work with that grower to make sure that they will harvest the lettuce to serve into the school system. There are church groups that are like, hey, we're having a church function, let's go get some produce from that grower. And that ties into like what you're talking about the integrity of an organic grower, of a natural grower, and them being very transparent about what they do, and then also opening up their space and their facility for the community to be a part of. Like I'm just thinking of like Rogers Farm up in Douglasville, Georgia, how they have their barns trying to set up where the community can come out there and do weddings, like which is dope, like I'm gonna go out and get married. I'm gonna go pick the flowers out the field, put them all together. Ashley in the game, they're gonna basically help me with the catering from a farm to table sort of like meal for my wedding. And then if they knew Pretoria Fields, they probably could bring some drinks up and things like that. But that's that sense of what organic, communal, naturally grown does. But then also because you are doing things natural, chemical free, and it's safe for kids to be around, right? So you can bring in the elementary school kid that's learning about the Earth's core and what's the makeup of it, or you could bring in that 7th or 8th grader that's learning about like environmental science and how does it all apply. But you have a space that is welcoming of it, just for the fact that it's not about pumping in heavy loads of chemicals that are harmful to our bodies, right?
Yeah. So our whole idea with the collective, so we're Pretoria Fields Collective, so we're a brewery and a farm, and I think what you're speaking of speaks to what our philosophy is let's go out and let's recreate a knowledge base that hasn't been there for a while. Let's create an environment where this is valuable, where people think about, oh, where did my food come from? And what we were talking about on the previous show we did last week was, where does our beer come from? How can we where is it made? What are the ingredients? What did who put what and where did it come from? And so that's a big part of what we're about in our story.
Yeah, you made a comment the other day when we were at a craft show in Atlanta talking about our rye, which is that what you're drinking?
That's right, I'm drinking
Fredo?
that Rye Charles.
How is it?
It's wonderful.
So,
yeah.
So you were explaining it to somebody and you told them, 2 years ago it was in the field, then it was at the maltster, now it's in the glass. It's just, I think it speaks to everything you're doing, and kind of what we're doing ties in together with it.
Matter of fact, how did you make this Rye Charles? While I have the guys here in front to break it down from the field to the glass.
I did not make
it.
You
did not make it. Our brewmaster, Eric Kirchner, made it. And Kevin.
Mr. Morgan, my father, he did grow it.
Yes.
Or at least grew part of it. And so that speaks to our process and why we're not going to have, why we may not have 56 beers on the wall. I don't know where 56 came from, but a large number, because what we've done is try to be true to the idea that brought the brewery to fruition, which is, let's see what we can grow, and then let's see if we can change and increase the ingredients of what we are growing to meet the beers that we want to produce, and then let's see how much of that we can change or increase, and let's experiment. Let's do everything from can we grow hops to we could grow coriander to we can grow wheat and barley. One interesting thing is that barley was grown in the state of Georgia up until the 1970s. And in the 1970s, with the advent of some certain practices by the larger breweries, there really weren't very many small breweries at that time. If they could save a small percentage on grains, then that meant a huge percentage in profits and revenue. So instead of buying from local growers, they would truck in, and I don't necessarily blame them. They would truck in or train in, bring it in on train loads, grains from the Midwest, where they can grow it at much lower cost because of various reasons. So grains, specifically barley, small grains, went away as a product in South Georgia. Well, with the advent with the resurgence of small breweries in the state of Georgia, we're still not as big as somewhere like Oregon. I feel like, we can grow antiquarian grains, and we can really make an impact on smaller breweries. I feel like if we don't produce one, that there'll be a maltster in the state of Georgia. And for those who don't know, grain in general is not used in its green state, meaning right out of the field. We would call that berries, and it's allowed to. It's gone through a process where it's allowed to actually germinate, and the enzymes that are activated during the germination process actually will break down the sugars and help with the beer production process. So the complex sugars that are inside the grain itself will be broken down from a complex sugar to a more simple sugar, and then yeast loves simple sugars, and they make alcohol out of it. And so interestingly enough, I think with that whole thing that we were talking about, the idea of the collective and the idea of having small producers back, and the idea of having, it all sort of goes into the same thought line with farmers. Hopefully we'll recreate this knowledge base or create a market for these products. And not only will Pretoria Fields use it, but hopefully the other breweries in the state will use it.
Yeah, I'm glad you broke that down for me. Because as I've been attending Pretoria Fields, I've heard the term collective at the end. and so I'm always like, what is the collective aspect of it? And as I was just hearing you speak, just thinking in terms of farmers that are trying to rebuild themselves or trying to find a way to sustain their family, it's about economics. And if there is a collective of breweries or businesses that will support and purchase from local breweries, then that also means that the farmer who has so many, I'm not sure how many acres of land does it take to produce what you would need as far as yield goes, but obviously if they have some land, they can grow something. And then it's a matter of like what you're talking about, teaching them the techniques that's passed on from one person to the next, from generation to the next. Then the next thing you know, you kind of close the loop on how it's growing, where it's growing, and who the farmers are, because everybody's following like the same process. It's kind of like when I first got into growing food, I used to till the ground and have the walk behind tiller and had the wheel hoe and all of this, and I was like, this is just too much work. I need to find a simple way to grow food for me and my family, and I came across square foot gardening. And so square foot gardening was just basic container gardening, growing foods in raised beds. But once I got the system down, I found out I can teach it not only to my family, but I can go into the school system and teach kids how to grow food for themselves and incorporating their math skills, their science skills, their social studies history in a way that wasn't too complicated. And
so are you self-taught, or did you have some formal education in agriculture, or how did that come about?
I tell people I went to BYU, Backyard University.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm a YouTube watcher. I am a blog follower. I am.
So you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm totally all of that, and that's how I got started. Like my grandfather grew like crops and stuff, and the old men in Plains used to grow stuff. But I went to the big city, like I was staying in Atlanta, Dallas, Texas, that sort of thing, and lost my job and had to try to figure out my way, and felt that I wanted to feed people, and so I started off, doing like the Feed the Hungry sort of programs and feeding people for Thanksgiving, but I just felt like that wasn't the way. And Koinonia Farms had an internship where you can kind of just live.
Where? I'm sorry.
Koinonia Farms in Americus, Georgia. Okay. They had an internship where you could spend 3 months on the farm just to kind of, find your way. And in the process of those 3 months on the farm, one of my mentors passed away of a heart attack. And so I just used nature as a healing mechanism.
Well, one of the best is, or one of the best examples is broccoli. So broccoli has a chemical in it called sulforaphane, and sulforaphane is what's the catchphrase right now? It's a superfood.
Oh, okay.
So it's supposed to help everything from preventing cancer to helping virility. I just made the last part up. So, but anyway, you get you get the idea. So the younger sprouts, there is more in the sprouts of, say, broccoli than there is in the older adult food. So I know there's a market at least for that particular product. And so that's interesting. So and that's part of how they grow and they make money on such a small. Yeah, on a small area or acreage.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I tapped into it just to try it out myself, and I wish that, and I'm pretty sure, like even with the kids at the school gardens that I do, that we try to do more on the with the microgreens as well. With the microgreens, just because again it's something that produces a harvest within 7 to 14 days, depending on how it germinates and sprouts up. And so if you take that cycle and repeat it over and over again, you have a cash flow that's available for you within a couple weeks. And thinking about the hurricane that we just talked about and restarting your farming operations. Yeah.
So as far as a typical week, what is and I know the week here in the past few weeks hasn't been typical, but what's a typical week look like for Farmer Fredo?
Well, I'm married. I have a son, so it's kind of starting the day off, getting my son off to school, and you kiss my wife before she goes off to work.
Very important.
Very important. Happy wife, happy life. But after that is contacting like farmers. Like right now, we're trying to reestablish our base of Georgia-grown farmers in the area. So it's in the morning parts, it's making phone calls to see if this farmer is available, if they're still in operation, going off to visit them. Then it's collecting produce, because more Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, I have some sort of pop-up market or a fresh box program going on. And so I'm collecting produce and packaging them up and delivering. Like on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I do my box program, I start about 7:30 in the morning, collecting the produce, getting it all together. By 10:30, we're boxing them up. And then from there, we're delivering in Camilla, Leesburg, and in Albany. And on average, we're probably delivering about 55 boxes each day. And so that's pretty much that looks like. And then on the weekends, I do the pop-up market. So like on Sundays when I do Pretoria Fields, most people are like getting ready to put on their Sunday best. I'm getting ready to go get down and dirty and pick up some produce for somebody that's like leaving it in the cooler and has their key underneath like the back of the flat tire of the old pickup truck behind the oak tree, that I'm going to go get the produce and bring it up to Pretoria Fields, and up here 1 to 5, and that's been like a blessing. But then in the meantime, like I'm learning about writing grants, so we're constantly out there looking for funding for the work and stuff we're doing in the community. So I'm doing research on market analysis and things that I didn't know you had to do when I first started farming, but it's necessary if you're trying to expand and build a sustainable business model. And I'm always looking for collaboration. So So it might be, Phoebe Hospital. They're interested in, or we want to bring the pop-up shops there, or and then I'm doing graphic design, so I'm making my own flyers and Facebook posts and Instagram and all these things that we have to manage. Plus, as well, working out opportunities with our board. Our board is made up of individuals from like the Albany Economic Development, Albany Chamber of Commerce, the Doherty County Commissioners.
So Flint River Fresh has a board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're 501c3. We were established December of last year, but we were founded through, we are part of the Flint River Soil Water Conservation District. So we are a subsidiary or a child, however you want to look at it, of the conservation district. And we were formulated because the conservation district participated in a study that was done by a group called like Grow Food Connection. They came down to Albany, met with some allies, some partners that were focused on increasing access to food here in Albany. And through a 2-year study, they came with some recommendations on what Albany can do to help with food insecurities or with food waste and things like that. And through that conversation, the conservation district decided, after they received a grant from the National Association of Conservation Districts to do an urban ag program, and that's how I came on board. They decided that we need to push the recommendations from that organization. And so Flint River Fresh came out of that 2-year study that was done by the University of Buffalo, that was through a program through the Georgia Cooperative Extensions.
Very good. Very good. Would you say that a lot of what you're doing is less farming and more promotion of the farmers?
Yeah, that's right now. That's where the work is at. That's what I would always describe ourselves as. You hear the conversation, people saying we want to do farm to school, or we want to do farm to table, or we want to do farm to like field, field to fork. But people don't know like where does the farmer live at, or where is a farmer that I can reach out to.
Well, if I understand right, you are figuring out where all of the guys in the trucks were, and you've gotten their phone numbers, and so you're calling the guys who were in the trucks who were delivering the peas to the offices, and then you're boxing them up for you and I or at Pretoria Field. So so organization as much as anything else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like just being an aggregator, a voice for the farmers. But then also, we're looking at how can we help the farmers learn new techniques, and that's why I was really intrigued about the conversation about growing the ingredients that you need for the farm.
Sure. How do you think? As far as what we're doing? Do you see the parallels between what we're doing with our beer production as well as what you're doing in the farming business? And I mean, one of the things that strikes me is we're talking about the muscadines and the different fruits and how we could combine those with the beers that we're producing. So, I mean, it's certainly part of the collective, or the idea of the collective would be to source some of your fruits and vegetables, not necessarily vegetables, but some of your fruits to be used as ingredients.
Yeah, we tried a little sampler of that during the art festival, where we had some growers that were growing some muscadines, and I got with Jen, and she got with Colin, and we basically took the muscadines, and you guys created a little a drink off of it. And it was like passed out like during the festival. So those are like and what I liked about that is that they're growers.
You mean Jennifer Harris?
Yeah, Jennifer Harris. Yeah, so she's over there.
She makes she makes drinks also.
Oh yeah, what type of drink?
It's all in the family.
Oh okay. Yeah, so Jennifer Harris. And so those are opportunities that exist, and it's just like if we have peach orchard or we have citrus growers that are growing Satsuma oranges that are in the area that are about to come off. We have growers that are doing persimmons. other fruit product. And so if you guys know like the season of when it's available and how you can do customizable seasonal drinks that can be promoted, then that's another stream for that family farmer to tap into. And then if there's the existing network that you guys are creating where your beer is sold in, Macon, Columbus, Augusta. It seems like every time I look on Instagram, there's a Pretoria Fields drink party in another city, and I always get the invite 2 days later.
That actually is Billy's fault.
It usually is.
Yeah.
Hey, you were talking about teaching kids in schools. Tell us a little bit more about that and how they react to it and how you think that's going to play out in the future and what they're going to do with it.
Kids will be kids. I'm going to start off by saying that you have some kids that are all about it. They bring their extra shoes, they go outside and get dirty. And then you have like some kids that are like, look, this isn't what I want to do. But what I found out with the kids and the school gardens, it all comes down to the relationship that the school, how the school promotes the garden bed. If the school kind of gets behind it, where you have janitors that might do some watering, you have other teachers that utilize the space beyond just that one or two teachers that are assigned and get behind it, then the garden itself starts to become a community space where, like, I'm doing a garden project at Deerfield Windsor at the middle school, and you see other classes at the middle school using it for like different projects, whether it's somebody doing a videography as a workshop, or somebody in science class trying to study from like seed to like growth life. And so those opportunities is where I see the most growth happen. When we started the community gardens, we were doing it in a partnership with the Doherty County Department of School Nutrition. So the nutrition office was growing produce to be served in the cafeteria around November and December that the kids can get behind and kind of know where their food comes from. And that model is continuing and still growing. But the biggest plus is seeing where there's a school like Radiant Springs Elementary, where the principal's kind of gotten behind it, where there is the garden, what's in the garden billboard that people see when they walk by. When they go into the cafeteria, they can say, this came from the garden. And so those moments, I've seen the kids be really enthusiastic. But the parts that I like is always hearing the kids tell stories about their Meemaw and their Pawpaw having a garden and them kind of going back and being able to help out and know what's happening. But the blessing for me, of course, is I'm watching my son. Like, I do a workshop called Grow Your Groceries, where I show people how to go from grass to groceries, container gardening, and seeing my sixth grader, my 11-year-old son being able to basically do my entire presentation. Mm-hmm. And for him to be able to take some third graders or some fourth graders and show them how to plant, how to develop the square foot gardening grid, what makes up good compost, what makes up good soil structure, for him to be able to articulate that, like as a father, I mean that's what you want. You want to see your child as a clone of you, and so that's the blessing piece. But then also to have, because of the work, have schools in Dothan, Alabama, kind of reach out and say, can you come out and help us get some things started, or Marianna, Florida, or Tallahassee, or universities like FAMU that are like, hey, we want you to come help teach us how you do this sort of work. And so I'm thankful for it, but then I'm also, I have to be mindful that I'm only one person trying to build something that's sustainable here in Albany, Georgia.
Oh, no, that's so awesome that you have, that you're getting such a response and, so many opportunities. One of the things we've tried to teach our patients over the past year, and my children and whoever will listen really, is if it doesn't grow in the ground or walk on the ground, you shouldn't be eating it. So try to decrease as much processed foods as possible. So where can people follow what you're doing, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, and so the quickest way is through Facebook. Yeah. A lot of my growth has been following us on Flint River Fresh on Facebook, or you can find me from Fredo on Facebook. We do have a website, flintriverfresh.org, which has our contact information, our office number. and our email address. And on our website, we also go through the different programs that we offer, from the Fresh Box, the pop-up farm stand, the mobile farmers market, the Grow Your Grocery workshop, or even our Fresh Harvest. And that's a program I'm really getting behind now. And the Fresh Harvest is where these farmers that I talked to you about that are growing things, we put out like a weekly list of what's available out in the field. And we solicit restaurants and different businesses to try to purchase from those farmers, and we bring the produce directly to them. And so we've done some farm-to-table sort of meals with Stubo's here in Albany. And so trying to find other restaurants, and even partner with Chef Laura, who's done like a cooking class at Pretoria Fields. And so that's another thing where you just talked about coming from the ground. Some people don't know how to prepare it. Right. So we try to find local chefs that are into doing farm-to-table meals, and we supply them with the produce, give them a little bit of the backstory behind the farmer and who grew it. And so those are opportunities that we're looking at. Cooking Seasonal is a program that we've done at Pretoria Fields we've done it like normally like on the second Sunday. So those are ways of just teaching people how to prepare food that is healthy and that's non-processed.
If they want to sign up for your boxes, how do we get that accomplished?
FlintRiverFresh.org. If you go to our website, we have a button that says the Fresh Box. It takes you to a page that identifies the pickup location. It tells you about the different size boxes that we offer: a produce bag, which feeds 1 to 2 people, a half bushel box that feeds 3 to 4, and a 1 1/9 bushel box that feeds 5 to 6. And the prices are $20, $30, and $50. And you order online, pay for it right then and there. And then we also tell you what time you can pick it up at the pickup location. So we have it in Camilla at Sweet Sealy's here in Albany. We have 229 Yoga, Live Naturally, as well as the Bread House. And then also in, got one more, I'm trying to think, got so many of them. All right. And then we have Victory Tabernacle as a church. And then we also have Porterfield United Methodist as locations where people can pick up. But then also, if you're a business and you have 5 or more employees that's interested in receiving our boxes, we will deliver to that business directly. You don't have to go to a pickup location. And if you're a teacher in Dougherty County and Lee County schools, we will deliver the boxes directly to your schools.
Awesome. Fernando Jackson, Executive Director of Flint River Fresh, or should I say Farmer Fredo?
Farmer Fredo it is.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being with us today.
I appreciate you guys having me here.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.